Welcome to the role of the Regional Center in creating strong family provider partnerships. This is the third module of a series designed by a team from the UC Davis Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, also known as the CED, and community partners and parents, specifically to support the individual needs of African American families of children with developmental disabilities in the state of California. My name is Elizabeth Morgan, and I work here at the CED, but I'm also a parent of a child with a developmental disability. In this module, you will meet several community members, both family members and professionals, and listen to their stories of their journeys of understanding how to utilize resources and supports of the California Regional Center system for children of developmental disabilities, and as well as learn from ideas on how to create the types of strong and healthy partnerships with providers in their lives. These are pictures of our son Eli, just around the time that he started intervention services. He qualified for Regional Center services around the age of 1.5 and has remained in the Regional Center system as a Regional Center client after he turned 3 under the category of autism. I always say that early intervention was an important time for our family. It was not only when my son started receiving the most valuable resources and services that helped him get to where he is today and thrive, but it was also where I learned the importance of my role on the intervention team. I discovered as his mother, I was the key connector between all the service providers on his team. And that although we had a lot of extra people in our lives that were supposed to be there to help my son, I found that I was the vital piece in making sure that all of those pieces fit together. Honestly, it was during early intervention where I learned to become a strong advocate for my son and understood that my expertise as being his mother was equally as important as the expertise of the professionals that was on his team. In California, early intervention happens before the child's 3rd birthday. Listen to Diane Williams, an early intervention client service manager at Alta California Regional Center, give a brief explanation of the California Early Start model and why engaging with families is so critical, as well as explaining the process and criteria for a child to qualify for services.
Early intervention in California is usually initiated by the parents, but sometimes we also get referrals from doctors or concerned people in the community who are concerned a child might have some delays. So they call us on our intake line at 978-6249, and that initiates the process to get them into the system, and then our intake workers will call them back and they will explore with the families what the concerns are. We have to have the parent's permission, so we're always contacting the parent or whoever the legal guardian is. So then thereafter they're assigned to a service coordinator by a client service manager, and that's based geographically because we have 10 counties in this area, and so we want the service coordinators who know the counties and the resources to contact those families. So a service coordinator would contact a family, and then they would talk with them about what kind of concerns they have, get releases from the family in order to make a referral to a program to do an assessment. So we would want to have a formal assessment done to identify any areas of potential delay for this child by a therapist, typically an occupational therapist, speech therapist, might be a physical therapist or an infant development specialist. And we identify a delay and determine the area of concern. We're looking for a disability that would be 33%. That would be different than a typically developing child. That's one area of eligibility. Or that they have some high risk factors, like if they come to us right from the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, that might be an area. Or if they are born with some kind of a diagnosis that we call an established risk condition. So that would, like an example, be a child that has Down syndrome. So they would be eligible. That's our eligibility criteria. So thereafter that, then they come into our program, and the service coordinator would create an IFSP, which is an individualized family service plan. And for the Regional Center in Early Intervention, once we have that assessment completed in the IFSP, we do provide therapy. So we contract out with different programs or agencies or individual therapists to go into the family's home and provide this therapy. And so that is agreed on by the parent, and then it moves forward and we do a periodic review every 6 months and an annual review of how things are going every year.
So thank you, Diane, for that very thorough explanation of the early intervention intake process. Now, one category that many families find very confusing is the global developmental delay category. Can you explain what exactly that means to families and children?
I'm glad you asked about the global developmental delay piece. Sometimes that's really confusing for families, and that's a term that comes up when children are turning 3. I was talking about families who are going through the eligibility process with the regional center to determine ongoing eligibility, and that is a category that is one of the 5 eligibility categories for ongoing regional center services. So in early intervention, that category comes up because it's a category that talks about children that might not have a specific diagnosis, and they might be children or adults actually in the regional center system. There's not a specific diagnosis that we know yet, but we know we treat that category as we would for a person with intellectual disabilities. So any services for people who have intellectual disabilities are captured in the global developmental delay category of eligibility. In early intervention, we don't always know if children have cognitive impairment at 3 years old. So sometimes we will attach that diagnosis to a child and their skill level, and we will reassess that in 10 years after they have had some time with the school district and they have opportunities to do triennials with the school district and see what the school process and progress might be. And so if it looks like 10 years later that that child does in fact have cognitive impairments, then they might get an intellectual disability identification with the Regional Center for Ongoing. But at this point, we just don't know, and we don't want to put that label on the child so early in their life.
Sometimes families can have concerns about their baby or toddler, and they go through the process of contacting the regional center to have an assessment done. But at the time of the assessment, there was not a significant enough delay to qualify their child for services. Listen to Diane's advice about what parents can do to follow up with the regional center when this happens.
As long as a child is between the ages of birth through 3, we're going to invite those parents to come in and come back to see if they continue to have concerns with an area of delay. It's not just a one-time shot. So sometimes, like this morning, I was talking with a service coordinator who is working with a family who has a very young baby who's only 3 months old, but was referred to us also by the NICU. And so we did an assessment with the high risk factors, and they don't meet any of those criteria. But the foster parents are still a little concerned. There's not a 33% delay showing yet. So we're going to invite that family to come back in the next 3 months or 6 months. As delays may start to show, then we'll want to intervene as soon as we can. So at any time in early intervention, families can come back. We typically say come back in about 3 months, because that will show if there is a delay that is going to start to widen. We don't want to get too broad, but it shows also that if a child is making progress, they'll be making progress and they'll kind of catch up and move forward.
Now, we'll listen to Michelle Johnson, Client Service Manager from Alta California Regional Center, talk about the role of the Regional Center and the partnership that you can expect with your Regional Center Service Coordinator.
The Regional Center really is designed to be a support system for families of children who have a developmental disability. We provide case management services. We help them locate resources in the community, really to meet those needs.
So thank you, Michelle. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the role that the Regional Center Service Coordinator plays in the lives of families?
The role of the service coordinator is to develop, to implement, and to monitor the individual program plan. They are essentially the face of the regional center. They are the person that the parent would call if they have any questions, if they have any concerns, if they want to review the IPP, or if services aren't being delivered according to expectation. The service coordinator is the individual that they would call.
If you don't take anything away from any of these modules, I hope you remember this key fact: relationships matter. This is especially true when you have a child with a developmental disability and you are developing a professional working relationship with your child's intervention team members. Listen to Diane from Alta talk about the importance of a strong relationship between the Regional Center Service Coordinator and the family. Diane, can you talk a little bit more about what happens if the personalities of the service coordinator and the family just don't mesh? And what can a family do, and tips that you can give to help them navigate that process?
I think it's important that the parents recognize their role with the service coordinator and feel comfortable in speaking their voice. And if they're ever feeling like they're not able to communicate with the service coordinator and be heard and have the dialogue be a back and forth discussion, then they should just call the client service manager. We have 4 different client service managers who supervise different regions geographically of the regional center, and we're always here to listen and to make sure the match is a good match with the parents. So I think that would be, first it would be try to talk it out with the service coordinator, and if the parent just didn't feel comfortable, then to take it up to the next step and always call a client service manager.
What I hope is clear by now is that your regional center is an invaluable resource and a key partner in helping you help your child. A common misconception that can occur when children have a developmental disability is that if you are more strict in your parenting practices, that they will act right. But that is simply not the case. The truth is that your child needs more, and it is up to us, the parents, to have to do more to get them what they need. This means adapting new parenting practices and partnering with complete strangers like your regional center service coordinator and other interventionists to get the right services and supports that your child needs. I will be completely honest in telling you that the idea of change and having to parent differently than the way that I was parented or experienced parenting in the past felt vulnerable. So if you are also feeling that way, know that you are not alone. Listen to Nikia's experience of partnering with her regional center service coordinator to learn how to help her child and learn how to deal with the emotions that she had to overcome to get her child to where she is today.
I was introduced to the Alta Regional Center pretty early on, which she's been with since 3 months until current, and they really helped. I mean, we got on it like right away. Like as soon as we found out what it was, and as soon as they came out and sent the home nurse to work with her therapy, occupational therapy, and like she's been with Alta, and I'm pretty sure that's where I got the majority of everything I needed to know, because that's really the only major group we've been with since.
Can you describe any fear or apprehensions that you might have had when partnering with your regional center service coordinator? And what feelings did you have about your ability to support your child after that partnership was made?
I had quite a few fears, just being so young, and when you hear something like seizures and developmental delays, I thought, the most severe case, and just her being so young, they couldn't really tell, how severe it was at the time. We had to wait to see as she got older, just with her development. I think, and just with being my first child, I was more scared just because I was still, at the same time learning how to parent and learning about, disabilities. So, I mean, I was really nervous about how it would affect her life, how I would handle it, not knowing if I, like what I was doing at the time. So I was really open to any type of resources. I've always been just like anything I could learn about it or apply to her life.
So Nikia, now that your daughter is much older, can you tell us how helpful do you think the early intervention was for you and your family, and how it helped your daughter become the person she is today?
The experiences of having therapy at home was very helpful. Just being so young and not really knowing what to do in the beginning, and having people that were willing to come and really work with her, because I really didn't know what I was doing back then. So, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I really tried to pay attention to, the tools and what they did, so I would know how to work with her as well. Just me finding out about the programs and everything, and having the opportunity to have people come and work with her all these years. I mean, it's been awesome. I think that's what really helps us in our daily lives.
Once your child is a Regional Center client, they will receive what is called an Individualized Program Plan, or an IPP. Listen to Michelle from Alta give the information about what an IPP is and how it works.
The IPP is a written contract that we develop with our families. It contains a list of goals and objectives. For example, we always start with a living goal. Is what kind of supports does a child need to live in the home? From there, we have an educational goal, and we describe what kind of educational services they're receiving through the school district. And we develop some of our kids have behavioral or adaptive type needs, and usually we'll develop a goal related to that. And so it is a set of, the IPP is a written plan that contains goals and objectives developed jointly with the parent and the Regional Center Service Coordinator, and really anyone who the parent would like to attend the meeting.
Thanks, Michelle. So can you tell us how often do these IPPs occur?
So IPPs happen annually. There is an option for a 3-year IPP, but most of our families, and it is our best practice to do them annually because people change and we really want our IPP plans to be current.
Can parents call an IPP at any time?
Yes, parents do have the option to call an IPP meeting at any time. We just request that they contact the service coordinator and we will schedule an IPP meeting.
So now that we know what an IPP is and how often it occurs, where can parents go to get more information on how to make meetings effective for their child?
Prior to an IPP meeting, especially when a child transitions from the age of 3 to ongoing children's services, we've developed what's called a family guide. And those are really great resources for parents. It's very thorough. It's a guide of all of our services. And we do that so that, because we know families get overwhelmed. And we mail those in advance of the IPP so that parents, families have an opportunity to review that. So that when the IPP meeting is scheduled and takes place, that parent has an idea of what is available, and it also enables them to have some talking points maybe written down so that when the service coordinator comes, they can have conversations about their needs and the services.
So now you know more about the role of the Regional Center and the types of support you receive once your child is a Regional Center client. Let's talk about the types of services that the Regional Center provides. Listen to Michelle give an account to the different types of services that can be included in an IPP throughout the lifespan of a person with a disability.
The Regional Center serves folks with developmental disabilities from birth to death, or from age 3 to death, essentially. We have lifelong services, so we have services that are geared toward children. We have services that are geared toward transition age, so that 18 to 22 age range. And then we have services that are geared from 22 through adulthood. Some examples of services include respite. We know that the constant, continual caring for a child with a developmental disability can be really overwhelming and exhausting. And so we have respite, which is designed to give the parent a break. We have daycare because some parents work, and we have daycare services. Sometimes our children have needs that are beyond that of a typical daycare.
Reference your family guide for an exhaustive list of the types of services that can be included in your child's IPP. And use the Regional Center website to get the exhaustive list of the services and vendors that they are contracted with to provide these services. Often, families have had to be resourceful and find additional resources in the community to meet some of the intervention goals they have for their child. Diane gives some additional examples of resources in the Northern California area that she also thinks is useful.
I'd like to emphasize the part about the families exploring what generic resources are also in their communities. Early intervention and the peace that we hold for their children is really so temporary. and it's not as strong as what could possibly be delivered from other community-based programs. For example, there are some Head Start programs, and there are some other nonprofit programs that might specialize in some of those areas that families might need. And I would say that would be for all families, but to explore your generic resources too. And if you're not sure of those, to inquire with your service coordinator. Another really strong resource that we rely on is the Warm Line or the Family Resource Center. They have a variety of different programs that they work with and can really connect families, again, wherever they're located. They have a resource directory, so we refer a lot of families to that source just because they are talking to other parents often who might have understand their situation. And the Family Resource Centers has a lot of activities that families can participate in, and so that's another great source for families to go to.
As your child grows, you might also find information from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities and Disability Rights California to be two additional resources that can be very useful in accessing information on knowing your child's rights and how to advocate for them. Just because your child has a disability does not mean they would not have a happy and fulfilling life. You do not need to lower your expectations for your child because they have a disability, and know that there are many children with developmental disabilities that are capable of living long and productive lives, which include meaningful relationships and being independent. Listen to Jane Paul, a licensed in-home behavioral therapist, discuss a success story that she experienced through partnering with families to help children during early intervention.
I have one that is he's our success story. We started seeing this child when he was 2 years old. And the first time I went there, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't see how this is going to change. It was not a good situation. We would be there for 7 hours, and 5 of those hours he was yelling and crying, throwing things, hitting people, and then he would not move. Mom had to be right there. 2 seconds, he would start yelling. It was a desperate situation, but that mom was there from the beginning to the end. That boy wasn't talking. We taught him how to use PECs. Right now, he is 4. He speaks in paragraphs, not sentences, in paragraphs. And that mom, we usually take parent participation data. That mom has been there, I would say 99% of the time, in session. She has sacrificed for her child. But now we are only seeing him 5 hours a week from 30 hours a week. So we are getting ourselves out, and he's actually really good. He just went to preschool and he's excelling. So we are really grateful. So that is the power of parent participation.
Now take some time to think about the information that you just heard and how you can apply it. I know that this is a lot of information, but there are so many of us that have traveled a similar road and are here to support you. You got this, and I'll see you soon.